Yoy!
I'm not gonna worry about your level of concern.
Yoy and double yoy!
We talking about
Twitter.
Triple yoy!
Think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize half of them are stupider than that.
Quadruple yoy!
We're not urinating on the fire, man. You guys are funny sometimes.
We mock ourselves.
That's right. No matriculating on the fire. The show goes on.
forever.
Forever in the long off season of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's what Jin's talking about. The conversation about the Steelers social media conversation live from Happy Valley West, a.k.a. The Valley, a.k.a. the 818, which is exactly twice the 412. This is not a math podcast. It is the week's hot and toxic Steelers takes.
Oh, yes.
I'm Kyle Crace here with Greg Benevin.
Hello.
And if this is your first time listening, we've got something special for you. It's our annual off-season tradition. Woo. Hit the music. Music player. Yeah, that's right. It's time again for our annual tradition with music. We've been taking names, we've been keeping scores of all the silly takes and with no remorse. It's the Yinzies. Oh, there's nothing we can do to stop it. It's the best and worst of your tweets. All the things you should save for therapy, but instead you throw it out right here so publicly to Yinzies. It's the best and worst of your tweets. I should have printed out the lyrics.
No. I mean, I remembered the song as you were saying it. I absolutely. That's a wonderful song you say, and you sang it very well. You really did.
Well, we still have one more verse, and it's going to start in just a moment. Here it comes. Should have printed out those lyrics. We can pick 'em up, we can put 'em down, we can LOL at all the fools that act the clown. It's the Yinzies. Is there anything more toxic? It's the best and worst of the best and worst of your godforsaken tweets.
That's
all
great.
right.
That's great.
It's that time again. The Yinzie, it's the fourth annual Yinzie Awards.
Wow.
We've been tabulating the tweets and burning through the hot takes. We're seeing, it's instead of what's the hot wings show that everyone loves?
Oh, Hot Ones, yes.
Yeah, instead of hot wings, it should be hot takes, and we're hot. How about this? This is hotter. Hot. It's time for our annual award show seasonal wrap up. Mm-hmm. Earlier than we wanted.
Yes.
But here nonetheless. And we embrace the pain that brings this, or whatever.
We need that picture Tomlin had of the sun setting on Pittsburgh when the season ended. We could use that same thing.
We embrace the pain, because if we didn't, then we would be matriculating down our leg. So, all right, let's start the award show off with the JuJu Award for Best Off-Field Moment of the Year. And I had a hard time coming up with, there wasn't a whole lot of off-field fun and drama this year.
Which is not the worst thing. I mean, there were some good things that happened off field, and I think you did a fine job of picking the winner here. But yes, it's not the worst thing when there's not that much that goes on off the field.
But yeah, I think it's hard to just name one event, because it was kind of a series of events, and that was when Russell Wilson put the Charm Tour, the full court press on Pittsburgh with the he showed up in the Pens box with shoot, I can't remember who was in
That's just it. But there were so many of these things. It is impossible to remember. And I think on top of this, it never really stopped. I mean, he was still going to Children's Hospital throughout the season. He's probably there right now, depending on when you're watching this. So yeah, I think you got the right answer. It was Russ, and everything he did for and in the community throughout this past year has been great.
Taking batting practice at PNC Park, signing autographs at Kennywood Park.
Right. It's so easy to forget all of the things he did. Remember the one time he was at Children's Hospital and like the Penguins just walked in? Like some of these, like not like Sid or Gino, but like just some other Penguins were also there, and they just had no idea that Russ was going to be there because Russ was just there. Like it was the Penguins' day, but they just happened to bump into Russ.
Yeah, who took the parking space? Oh, hey, I see. What's up? Okay. Rush City Charm Tour.
Yes.
You win the Yinzie.
A consensus winner.
Our next category is the Yinzer Crazy Award for Bizarre Fan Moment. And
I'd forgotten about some of these.
well, the one thing that was odd, it would kind of resurface. This wasn't new to Reddit, but it kind of resurfaced where these kind of innuendos of things between Kenny's wife and Zach Gentry, and which we did the research and discovered that came down to some fan fiction that someone had posted on Reddit.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, so I can stop cringing.
And that was a pretty weird one.
Yes.
And that didn't even originate this year, but that just kind of resurfaced this year.
Okay.
And then, of course, alleged superfan Joe Manganiello gets the new hosting gig on Deal or No Deal, and then while he's up there, decides to take a shot at Tomlin's clock management skills during one of the games.
See, that's my pick for the bizarre fan moment because, I understand the Steelers are a global brand, and I understand that most people know Mike Tomlin is the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers and all that, but that's such a weirdly specific reference for a show that's pitched at, the lowest common denominator of people. So I think that's my bizarre fan moment. Of all the things, why make any? If you were going to make any Steelers reference, why this one at the time, and why did that make it to air? That's going to be my pick. But I can be talked into something else.
They know better.
Yeah, they know better, Joe. Come on, what was up with that? But then again, I was the one watching to see if there was going to be any kind of Steelers reference or anything. So who is the fool now? That's not bad. Although, the only other thing I could think of was this. There's one of these thirst trap accounts. I think her name's Amanda Vance, and she's always just posting thirsty stuff.
Okay,
but I'm sure for the clicks and for the likes, she took a real negative Tomlin angle this season and was fire Tomlin train and stuff, and printed out his LinkedIn and brought it to a game and was
whoa,
it was so I don't know. So that might be the crazy.
Is this woman actually a fan? Has she ever followed the team before?
I don't know.
Okay.
I guess it depends on who she's dating or whatever the beat is. I don't. Maybe she's paid in promotion. I don't know.
Okay, it just seems because that seems like the saddest part about the algorithm is if you were doing the analysis, it'd be okay, how can we get more clicks for men? Okay, start saying fire Tomlin. A year ago, this lady might have said fire Matt Canada, having never seen the Steelers, or it's just jump on these trends, ban the DH. Just picking random sports trends to put with thirst traps feels like the grodiest parts of AI without even the AI.
I would if it would help us, I might try it. Where do we hire a thirst trap?
I'm sure we could.
Can I get?
We could find one where we live and who we know. We could find one.
All right. Well, we got to do I got to clean up the backyard here. I guess. I don't know.
I got to get a haircut, but yes,
got to get a backdrop for this blank white space here. We're sitting in front of eternity. Okay. Oh, enough. Okay. The next award is the Deebo Award for Best Alumni Moment. And it was kind of a quiet alumni. Mm-hmm. I think for me, one of the coolest things was when this is before, of course, before election season. This is when AB and Bell came out for the boxing match, and they came down together. And Bell had that awesome kind of black and gold. It wasn't a kilt, but I don't think it was a skirt. I don't know.
No, it was. It's a garment that's impossible to describe, but it did look nice. I mean, I at the time that certainly was a strong contender, and I'm glad you included it. I like your pick. I like the other thing you wrote here, and I think is the Troy Resilience Bowl. I thought that was what a nice alumni moment. It did what a lot of these moments should be. It makes you go, "Aw," and you think of the old days, and you're glad to see that the guys mostly look good and no one got hurt.
And if you want to hear more about that Troy's Resilience Bowl, we had I'll call it exclusive interview with Chris Kirkpatrick from NSYNC, and that ended up being the most popular episode last year on Spotify, not necessarily on YouTube, or on or some of the other, but on specifically Spotify. That was the most popular episode of the year. So go back and check that out. Okay. Yes. Our next award is the Vance Mac Posterizer Award. This is for the best photo op of the year. And you really had to go back to the beginning of the year for any kind of the big. If it had turned out a different way, it's almost forgotten now because it ended up in a loss. But man, when Landon Roberts knocked that ball out in Dallas,
I think that's a good choice. I think that's a real two roads in the wood, two ways this season could have gone. Because if they win that game, then that last game doesn't matter, and maybe you get to see different things. The guy's game against the Bengals doesn't matter at all, and it's so yeah. But I for something on the field. I think that's as good photo op as any. I really do. But I'm trying to think maybe something from either the Giants or Jets game where the offense was really, when it clicked in with Russ, it was like, oh, this is what it's like to score a lot of points. I don't know if there's an exact moment from that, but yeah, I think you got a good choice with that one.
I liked when I guess it was Washington, right?
Yeah.
When after
the
we
guy
drew him
jumps
off
offside.
sides, and then Russ did the AB dance. That's I don't know if that's necessarily a poster, but that could be a GIF.
It's certainly something you remember very clearly.
It was a meme all season until the last month.
It very well might have been the high mark of the season too. So I think that's a pretty reasonable choice as well.
Okay, well, from best photo op to worst photo op of the year, and I think my choice, because not only is this just kind of like a bad photo op for us, but I think it will in turn become maybe an iconic moment for the Ravens. Yeah. And that's Derrick Henry giving the stiff arm to Minkah Fitzpatrick in the playoffs.
100%.
Like that's going to be that's going to be on every Ravens highlight reel for all eternity.
Oh, absolutely. That is absolutely the correct answer. You could tell that the next day. Like that night, every single story, if you searched Steelers just on Google, that was the picture that came up. I think it's the one the AP ran with, because how could it not be? It tells the entire story of the game in an image. It is absolutely the worst photo. You could argue it's one of the worst photo ops for the Steelers in many years since Ben and Pouncey on the bench, and even that has like the positive aspect of like, hey, these guys had such a career together. So yes, that's the correct answer, Kyle.
Yeah, since 3 more yards, since Pouncey and Ben on the bench, since
right, yeah, it's you got to go back to. I'm trying to think. That's just it. She can't think of others because despite there being some big losses, that one is, because in big losses, you think of the other team celebrating. This is something that, again, tells the entire story of the season and the game. Not the entire season, but the second half of the season in that one image.
All right. The next award is the Najeh Davenport Dirty Laundry Basket Award for low point of the season. And I don't know, take your pick, from the loss to the Browns to the loss to the Ravens to the other loss to the Ravens. I don't know. It all came down to the first Ravens loss, and then after that, it all came down to the playoffs. So I'll take you. I mean, you know,
I'm gonna. Yeah, I agree. It's. I mean, the Chiefs' loss can't be looked at. You know, is certainly in there too. But I think the loss in the playoffs, because that's where it's final. And you know, this podcast is certainly built on a foundation of positivity and optimism. But you know, at that moment, there was none left to be had for the season. So I'm going to go with that as the literal low point.
Yeah, exactly. Because even going into that run, it was like we could lose them all and still be fine in the
Russ
playoffs.
says that at the end of the Bengals
Yeah.
game. We saw him go up to say that to Cam, and Cam responded to that more positively than I might have in the moment.
Let's
So,
win
yeah.
4. Let's win 4.
We're just
okay.
gonna win 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's a great plan. Let's write it down. Set a reminder.
We're going to live that life.
Live that life, that 4-game streak. Okay. Next award is the Cowher Power Award for season's defining moment. And I didn't come up with a lot of choices for these, but
No.
if any,
And it's because it's so hard to think of exactly what would it be. Like, I mean, I thought you made a good choice here with the one you wrote down. I think that's certainly indicative.
Russ's fumble at the goal line, that was against the Ravens, right? So I don't know what you can't say that was truly the season's defining moment, but it kind of, if anything, was it a turning point? I don't know.
Well, I think it's a good choice because it sums up the season in a way. They made progress. They made real progress. They moved forward, and then the other guys made a play. The other guys made the play, and despite their best efforts, they couldn't quite get it done. And then what happened directly after that was a 90-plus yard drive to not necessarily put the game out of reach, but make it where it was just on the verge of being out of reach. So I think that for all those reasons and what you said, that is a good choice for season's defining moment.
I somewhat resent that.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, God. Well, you know, what would it have been? I guess if we would have won the playoff game, then maybe that would have been the defining moment.
That would have
Yeah.
winning a playoff game at this point. That would be a defining moment, 100%. Winning that game that we just talked about, and then still losing in the playoffs. Then that game would have been the defining moment. Like,
The next category is offensive moment of the year, and
some good choices here, Kyle.
well, you know, the one that was the game winner or the game sealer or whatever you want to call it was the Mike Williams catch against the Commanders.
Yeah, that's my pick.
And you know, that was the one that was that won a game against a high caliber team. You know, although in the Steelers' official yearbook video of top 10 best plays, their number one play of the year was the Najeh touchdown against the Raiders.
Also a good pick. I totally understand it. That was one where everyone came together. It was like that. I could see that being the pick because that's how they wanted to play. That's the team they wanted to be from the beginning, and it all showed in that play against the Raiders. So I get that. I think that would be number 2. I picked the Mike Williams play because that was the one where in that moment you really could believe in the heights of this offense.
Yeah.
Here's a guy they just brought in who has been to maybe a practice and a half, I don't know, and makes this great game-winning catch, but was also a great throw in the heat of the moment. It was very hard not to be high in that exact moment. So that'll go for my offensive moment of the year.
Anything could happen.
Yes.
Anything is possible at that point. If I guess maybe these were more poster moments, like the Pickens touchdown, the juggling catch against the Jets, and the touchdown
Still
against
a
the
big
Commanders. Those
Yeah.
were kind of maybe more big. Maybe I should have put those under poster moments.
Well, I think those were also there for
Yeah.
offensive moment of the year because I don't know what would have been other than these ones that you mentioned. No, I thought those were fine picks because the Pickens catch against the Jets. It's like again, it's part of that. Whoa, this is what the offense looks like with an experienced quarterback. So that certainly puts in the offensive moment of the year. And the one against the Commanders, same thing. They were answering. Like, remember they had the goofy thing that didn't work out with James Pierre and the special teams. So that was them being able to keep pace with a real good football team. So I think that was a fine.
Oh, I
too.
forgot that moment. That moment deserves some kind of special recognition this year for What? Maybe just like what the hell play?
Most high school play you should have made. Yes, because that's a touchdown basically if he just holds on to the ball.
Yeah, top 10 what if play of the season.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. There you go. That's when we go through our annual thing of not doing mock drafts. The what if play of the year. That's a fine idea, Kyle. I really like that. I really like.
I got to go watch all the plays again.
No, you don't. No, you don't. We can just come up with it from memory, and if we miss a few, that's okay too.
All right, so let's move on to defensive moment of the year, and
a lot to choose from. May not seem that way from where we're sitting, but there is.
Yeah, after watching back the highlights, I mean, the one that is really head and shoulders just as far as just athleticism and holy hell was the Peyton Wilson interception versus the Ravens.
Choice.
Yeah.
A fine choice. I think that. I mean, I could see a strong case for that because that was just unbelievable when it happened. I think that's a go. And I think the failed 2-point conversion at the end of the game is certainly a big moment too. Henry's fumble in that game, but the other option I think was also Peyton Wilson. To stoop that picks up the touchdown against the Bengals. But I think your pick is the right one because that's like we're talking about here. You want to talk about hope for the future. That interception by Peyton Wilson is as good as it gets. I mean, it's. I know a lot of people who've watched the tape, and my God, I'm not going to. Of the last few games, have said Peyton Wilson played better than maybe a lot of others in the defense when the defense fell apart there in the last 5 games. So that certainly offers some real hope for the future after seeing some great plays this year.
There were some maybe more key moments, like Corey Trice had the interception in the end zone against the Broncos.
Yes.
Beanie Bishop had a, it was they would have had, that was against the Giants. They would have had to, they were still had 35 yards to go, but it was still a game kind of sealing interception. Even that Beanie Bishop interception against the Jets is, yes. I mean, I think they're still all runner-ups to that.
I think just in terms of that's like Rod Woodson could have made the Peyton Wilson play. That's a Troy play. That is a Shazier caliber play. What he did.
Yes. All right. Next category. It's if we could have one play back. This is I don't know. Is this the Multiverse of Madness award? If you could have one play back, and we already talked about the Russ fumble on the goal line. Would that change the entire season?
Yeah, I see. I mean, I can't. I could say that sums up the season. I can't say that would have changed the entire trajectory of the season in a more positive way.
Say he scores. Russ scores there. I don't know.
I don't think that stops Derrick Henry. I don't think John Harbaugh thinks all of a sudden, okay, we're not running the ball, just throw it all the time like we used to in the games when Lamar didn't play as well against Pittsburgh's defense.
What about the Landon Roberts forced fumble against the Cowboys?
That's my pick.
He recovers that, and Steelers win the game. Yeah.
I mean, that's of the plays here. That's the play that if you make that, the game is won. That the other ones are like, well, this could have happened, and then this guy, No, you pick up that, you get that fumble, the game is over. Justin comes out, takes a knee, we all go home late on Sunday night. That's my pick, just because it determined an actual game.
What about Russ's pick 6 against the Ravens?
They were still on their side of the field. I mean, they would have had to drive all the way down there. There was so much of the fourth quarter left. I mean, they certainly had the momentum at that point. But and that's maybe number 2 because that could have led to a win. But the Roberts play is, pass, fail, win, lose right here, right now.
That's a all-time highlight video moment if he recovers that,
Yes, or anyone does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or this is this in hindsight may have been the turning point for the entire season when Najee fumbled against the Eagles.
That's not a crazy theory, Cal. It really isn't. I mean, they were coming back. It's they had the momentum as we now know. Russ said to Tomlin at the half, "Hey, we're going to come back and win this thing." As they're walking off, that's that I could kind of see. But man, I see your point. I think that could have been a turning point, but it just the Steelers had the ball twice in the fourth quarter. I mean, it's the Eagles controlled the ball so much, and maybe they don't do that if the Steelers are ahead after the Najee throw, but it just seemed like eventually that defense was going to wear down against that Eagles run game.
All right, so we'll give it to Landon Roberts, Yinzie winner. All right, the next category for the Yinzies. I don't even know if this qualifies this year because I didn't really have enough. There's not enough nominees, but there's
Which is fine.
the most underreported or undertweeted story of the year. And so in the moment when it happened in March, after we spend 3 full months of draft season and mock draft season, you would think that a detail like this would come out before he's selected as your first round pick. But we found out after he was drafted that Troy Fautanu was a lifelong Steelers fan.
I agree. This was the pick. This is the right choice, Cal. Yes, we didn't know that. Because we were saying we don't know who they want. We want them to draft. If we had known that, we would have been rooting for them to draft him long before that occurred.
Yeah. And would have been a very important detail to, so I don't know, maybe less mock drafts, more real.
I mean, I
something.
guess that we have to look at the prospective draft these tweets because I mean they found that, right? They found Fautano like rooting for the Killer Bees in the Jesse Cottick game or something, right? Wasn't that it? Like, isn't that in there?
So
It
this was
something like
after
that.
he was drafted. Then it's the tweet sweeps.
Yeah, they went
where,
look through the tweets because I'm sure they have a PR firm that does such things, and and they found a lot of those like "Go Troy, go Ben," that kind of stuff. Like, not that we're saying that the last thing you should do is spend more time on Twitter. My God, but just that's where I can't believe nobody did that research of all the different mock drafts and all that. That nobody thought to like, hey, let's just go back a few years. This guy, that wasn't part of a PR firm.
You missed it. Steeler blogosphere. Okay. Next category is most improved Steeler of the year, which is hard to say in a season where they started off so hot and then tailed off. Can you even nominate Cam Hayward?
I was wondering about that. I mean, he improved to being back who he was before the injury. It's like, it's the same argument they have when they give out that NFL comeback player of the year. Can they give you the comeback award if you were just not good the year before? So, I mean, or not that Cam wasn't good. He was just very hurt. But, I mean, that's a decent choice. My suggestion for this is coming up in a moment. Who I would pick as improved Steeler.
Go ahead, moment.
Oh, no, mine would just be Calvin Austin. I mean,
Okay.
I never thought this guy was going to be much more than a fifth receiver, but he could be a 4 or even a 3. I mean, he showed he was tough. He made way more plays and touchdowns with Russ as quarterback than I ever thought he would have had in years. So I was genuinely impressed with Calvin Austin this season. If we did a first half of the season, like first half Yinzies, I might have given it to Dan Moore before the drop off in the second half. But yeah, those are kind of the 3 guys. Or maybe Broderick Jones in the second half because he certainly played better in the second half than he did in the first. It just wasn't all that good in the second half either.
So Calvin Austin had 36 receptions for 548 yards, which are career highs. Of course, his rookie season was didn't exist, so it's really his only 2-year output. All right, so the stats confirm that.
Oh, hey, this is a new day of us looking at stats on this show. You got math at the beginning and stats now, folks. We are coming up in the world.
Yeah.
I can't give you all the ingredients to the hot dog. You might not like it.
Might not like the hot dog ingredients though. All right, so. Next category, most regressed Steeler.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to believe what they say on Twitter, you would say Minkah Fitzpatrick. And maybe statistically that's true. But then the haters like Mark Madden would say TJ Watt because he really didn't have he didn't change he wasn't a game changer the last month.
No.
Broderick Jones, if you could say he was, certainly the haters would. I don't know who gets your most regressed Steeler.
I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, I could see the argument for Minkah just because I think I saw Kazora post that what is it the quarterback rating when throwing against Minkah was like over 120 this year, and we had the posterized moment with the Derrick Henry at I do feel I mean it's so hard to pick between Minka and TJ as to which is like the most regressed, because I'm not even sure if it's necessarily they regressed versus the other teams found better ways to neutralize them, such as what we definitely think happened with TJ with all these chips and all that kind of thing. I mean, if it didn't perform to their standards or make the splash plays, then I could see Minka, because he admitted that. I mean, he said that, when he got the Pro Bowl, like, I didn't have a lot of splash this year, so I guess I'll go with that. But it's, regressed is more like didn't meet their high standards as set by previous seasons.
Yeah, I kind of want to be hard on TJ. I might go TJ just because I've been hyping that TJ's on pace to be greatest Steeler defender of all time, and this was not the season to use for anecdotal evidence.
That is a fair assessment too. I don't think there's a wrong answer here.
Okay. There's no wrong answer to most regressed.
yes, unfortunately.
Okay. Let's move on to best prediction of the year, and usually there are none, but anyone, and I think anyone, and this is not just any single person, but anyone who said that we needed a second receiver at any point in the season, I think would end up being a correct prediction.
It's like that Time magazine when the person of the year was you. Like, that's what this is with the number 2 receiver. It was whether you were a hater or you're a supporter, positive or not. If you said this team needed a number 2 receiver, you were correct.
In hindsight, this guy talks out of both sides of his mouth, so
yes,
it's hard to, and like any of those people on the Fan or whatnot. But in hindsight, Colin Cowher did get it right in May when he said that the Steelers have the toughest schedule he's ever seen from Thanksgiving on in league history. And he's like, do you see the last 6 quarterbacks Pittsburgh faces? Watson, who it wasn't Watson, but Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, and Joe Burrow, and that ended up being spot on.
That certainly was correct. Yes, I mean, this team could have dealt with it better, and ironically, they would have rather faced Watson than Winston at the time, since Winston was playing much better than Watson by the time they got there. But yes, that the gauntlet was just as challenging and just and far too much for this team as anyone might have thought.
Let's go to worst prediction of the year, and it could easily go to Vegas or Stat Kings, who put the over under. It was anywhere between 7.5 and 8.5, no matter, depending on where you put your bet. But that was over by week 11.
Yes, I mean, you would have lost. I mean, I know that they set these to get more action that way, but they've lost with this so many times with the Steelers, or they set it at 7.5, 8, and it's always better than that. Like, at some point, the sportsbooks have to realize we're losing on this exact bet.
Or maybe it's just that's how they bring them in. Maybe that's how maybe the Steeler fans were the chum that brings in the big guppies. Is that how it works? I don't know.
Close enough.
I think that's how the targeted ad in my gaming came up. A good 1A or number 2, I think, is anything that was quarterback battle.
That's right.
Because it was never, Russ was in the pole position and he stayed in the pole position.
If not for the single worst first day drill in the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers, this never actually occurs. There is no this goofy quarterback battle thing, which felt like nonsense at the time, and many people were trying to tell you was nonsense, was always nonsense.
No one ever paid for the sledding accident. We never no heads rolled for
Although
that.
Tomlin brought it up at his final press conference. He did say there were too many soft tissue injuries this year, and I remember thinking, wow, I've never heard him say anything like that. Like, when he said big changes were coming, he might have meant in the weight room and the training staff more so than anywhere else.
Yeah, everyone's doing some extra yoga in the off season. Any other bad predictions? Brendan Ayuk to the Steelers. That might be the winner there. I don't know.
It's up there. I mean, everyone has sworn that they had the deal on the table, and at the last minute he went upstairs to the Niners and said, "I'm staying here," which in the end Probably maybe for the best. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't have that season-ending injuries if he's here. I'm not sure how the rest of the season plays out. I think this team was more than an extra wide receiver away, but an extra wide receiver, particularly one of Ayuk's talent, would have helped. But that certainly has to be on this list of goofiest predictions.
Let's move on to the worst insider moment of the year, and the insiders are good at getting it wrong. For me, way back in March when the Russ signing went down, the instant reaction from the locals was one of disgust. You had Kabali saying that the signing was stupid, and you had DK saying that the signing could set the franchise back. Now, here we are in January. You could say, well, hey, maybe those are true. We didn't win a playoff game. But I don't think it set the franchise back, nor was it stupid. I think it was one of the smartest quarterback signings, maybe of the free agent era.
Yeah, you had to find out exactly what he had left, and you didn't have to pay anything to get him. So it's hard to say this set the franchise back unless you're dead set on the idea of this team absolutely bottoming out to be good again, which, we have exactly like 1.5 examples of it actually working, and yet we still don't live in a world as we speak where the Washington Commanders or Cincinnati Bengals have won a Super Bowl. So I'll reserve judgment to see whether bottoming out can work. So I can see that as absolutely being one of the worst. I mean, that's more a prediction than an insider. It's not like they were in the locker room and somebody said that, but I can see your point of this being people that pride themselves on their analysis and insight, giving something that proved to be so demonstrably wrong.
Yeah, so definitive and so unwarranted and over the top. Although, if you want something more specific, how about Barstool's insider information that of the Death Star formation that on the same time the field would be Justin Fields, Najee, Jalen Warren, and Cordell Patterson, which I do not believe we saw.
I don't think you ever saw that once. I'm not sure. I can tell you that play is probably a 3-yard loss from just hearing what that formation is.
No opinion.
I don't know that I have an opinion that's worth expressing.
I didn't remember that, so I'm glad you brought that back up. I'm just trying to visualize that. Like I guess the idea is like you're running the toss option. Like who's blocking for who in this? I have no idea what's occurring here. I'm trying to visualize.
Yeah, there's also on the field is Michael Pruitt, and Washington.
Yeah, I guess Pat probably isn't on the field in this formation either.
Okay, insiders. Why you be insiding? Okay, how about the Happy Trails Award? Steeler we won't see again, and I included because they were still on the team at this time a year ago. I included Kenny and Deontay Johnson.
Understandable. I by the time you watch or view this, who knows what team Deontay is going to be on? He may be on another 3 separate teams by the time you watch this podcast.
Guy went from top 10 all-time Steelers yards, top 5 all-time Steelers receptions to being on 4 teams.
He was yelling in the Texans locker room about how they didn't get him the ball enough in a playoff game they won at home. I mean, that is like speed running being a problem. Like you couldn't get through the whole game before causing a problem in the locker room. Anyway, I just thought that was very amazing.
What about Dan Moore, Happy Trails? What's the ultimate verdict going to be on his career?
Really a very productive 4th-round pick. I mean, it's who played a lot of games. A guy that was definitely thrust in earlier than he should have been. He was meant to be a backup reserve guy, and then he had to be a starter for an immobile quarterback. And then he toughed through it, and he built himself a career. In the last month, he cost himself a lot of money. By being destroyed by the league's best pass rushers, but he'll still make out well. I mean, we live in a world where Chooks got a decent paycheck before the Patriots are like, we don't think this guy should ever play football again. So Dan Moore will get a decent payday, not what it was at the halfway point of the season, but in terms of getting a value out of a 4th-round pick, I don't know what more you could have expected reasonably from such a player.
Best 4th-round pick since
I don't know about that. I mean, they got a lot of use out of him. I don't know if he certainly wasn't like the most talented. I mean, Ike was a 4th-round pick.
Since
Ike was a genuinely very good player. Dan Moore was serviceable at best. So that's not a good analogy. I'd have to really sit and think about it. I mean, Herbig was a 4th-round pick who's shown flashes of real talent, but occasionally disappears too.
And what about Najee? Happy Trails. Najee went from one of the all-time only Steelers rusher to start the career with 3 1,000-yard seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I could see signing Najee, but I'm not sure what he's going to cost. But I mean, they're pretty dead set on not doing it. They want to bring in someone through the draft, I guess. I think Najee was drafted for a team that didn't exist at the time. He was drafted to help Ben one last ride at the championship, but by then they didn't see or didn't know that the offensive line was all the way dead. So Najee had some great early seasons, but was just never a back that could control a game. I mean, we've seen what those look like, and maybe with a better offensive line, a better quarterback, he can. But yeah, it's a real shame because he's a good dude with a lot of talent. But they seem very dead set on that's not signing him. So it seems he's moving on.
Rooney said we got to have a better running game, so they went and drafted the best running back out there.
Yes,
and then they said we're not going to give you a great line. We're going to give you a couple other rookies out here on this line, and you're going to have to run it anyway, and you're going to have to run it a lot because this quarterback can't get hit. You're going to have to run. And that's all it's all he did, and he never got hurt. And
he got hurt some. I mean, remember the weird plate thing early in the season,
the foot thing.
And there were some games where we kind of thought he might be lying about the injuries because he wasn't running all that well. But he never got the kind of injuries you would assume in a season for someone that got so much carry, so many hits.
So I don't know. Happy trails. It would have been nice to have,
yes.
Nice to be longer Steeler career. I think
certainly, I agree with you. Mm-hmm.
Moving on, how about the Welcome to Steeler Nation Award? We're happy to have you here, and I think Zach Frazier is probably an obvious name.
Yes, that's a really good one. Yeah, he's going to be here for a long time.
I was also happy. And I hope that they get a new contract with Dante Jackson. I was most curious about what he was going to bring to the team, and after it all said and done, I'm happy to have you, Dante Jackson.
I think for me, I'd have to know exactly how much he was injured down the stretch, because boy, when things fell apart, they sure picked on him a lot. But also Joey wasn't in some of those games, so I mean that's on them to figure out exactly how much Dante's injury held him back, and they're certainly going to, it seems, either bring in another cornerback or draft one fairly high. But I could absolutely see him around as the guy to mentor the others. Sure.
And maybe the best signing of the season, Deshaun Elliott.
That's right. What a signing that was.
I wouldn't mind him being Steeler for the rest. I don't know how much is left, but I wouldn't mind him sticking around for a few more.
Absolutely. Where would they have been without him? He was, for as much as you could say, there's a lot of talk that Minka fell off. A lot of that was picked up by the slack of Deshaun Elliott.
All right, welcome to Steeler Nation.
Yes.
Hope to have you.
And we have no idea what to say about the quarterback, so we glossed over that.
I don't know.
I
mean, I would say
assuming Fields, but I have no idea as we sit here.
Yeah.
And we don't have to know because it's not even February.
I'm down with Russ. If they, I wouldn't. If they say, "Hey, we're running it back with Russ," I'm here for it.
As long as they bring in a lot of wide receivers and the offensive line improves greatly, I can see it working with Russ. But I can't see it working with Russ unless they fix those two things. But that's also what the offseason's for.
Yeah, I mean, I just would you hey, Justin, we're going to give you a superstar quarterback contract, but you're going to have this line. We don't know how much better it's going to get, and we're not going to we're not going to really have some great wide receivers.
Right. So they have to fix those two things before I can start worrying too much about quarterback.
All right, the next category is the Yinzie for Tomlin moment of the year. And as much as we got with Hard Knocks and all this and 2 pressers a week, man, there weren't as many great Tomlin moments, I didn't think, this year. For me, I think the one that almost kind of defines the season, and it certainly did for a while when it was Tomlin's Coach of the Year conversation. It was the Lone Ranger.
Yeah, I think that's the one people are going to remember. I mean, it's the way this plays out. It could be the very last one from the last press conference when they said, "Did George show up late to the Christmas game?" And he said, "I respectfully plead the Fifth Amendment on the grounds my answer may prove to incriminate me," or whatever that answer was. But that's we don't know that that's the case moving forward. But I agree with you. I mean, that's the one that was because that's where the national press picked up the idea of Tomlin as Coach of the Year at the time, because it seemed confusing to people that hadn't seen Justin Fields play in the first 6 games.
Yeah. Christmas. That was so long ago. I don't know. What?
He was genuinely surprised by that question. I mean, he handled it like you could have handled that a lot worse. Be like, Christmas, what's that? Like, we don't talk about that here. But he didn't say that. He just said, "Wow, this was a long time ago." Yes.
Another good Tomlin moment was wearing the whistle to Kennywood, which I think is I don't know what.
If you saw that in a movie, you'd find it hard to believe. Like, that's how great that was. I mean, I didn't watch Hard Knocks because I get anxious about such things. But I mean, the moment with Joey Porter Jr. was nice. That, you're not going to be great today. It's about, the work forward through it. That final speech, in front of the sun setting on Pittsburgh about "I love this even when it hurts." That's not bad. But again, I made it a point not to watch Hard Knocks. Maybe a few years from now, I'll go back and, watch it when it's buried in the recesses of HBO Max, but I could see there probably were some options there. But it can't be anything other than the Lone Ranger moment.
Yeah, I mean, those Hard Knocks were good, but I didn't think Hard Knocks was good enough. I don't know.
I agree.
I'm sure the best stuff was on the cutting room floor, and I'm sure that was intentional most of the time.
We didn't get to see any of the Deontay and Baltimore stuff. They got everyone gets a little bit of editorial control, and that's where the Baltimore just started to strike those remarks from the jury. So I'm sure the Steelers got a say in something too.
All right, let's move on to the Randy Fiechner Strawman Award for the haters' biggest target. How is this not the Matt Canada Award?
Or the Mike Tomlin Award, or the Mike Tomlin Doppelganger Award
for the haters' biggest target of the year, and it all depended on what part of the year it was. Because you had Broderick Jones early, you had Minka kind of throughout the season, you had Terrell Austin later. You had Najee kind of early in the season. I don't know.
Art Smith after a while. Yeah. No, I'm kind of wondering, because I feel like, one, you could give this to Tomlin every year. Like, that's sort of the thing about this. But now that I think about it, I wonder if, because you're right about it was different people at different years. I wonder if the right pick for this is Arthur Smith, because like people were complaining in the early games, like, Justin's not scoring touchdowns. They're not scoring touchdowns. And then like with the Russ Rise, it was okay. And then, starting with the Browns game, it was Arthur Smith's fault again. And then it was all the rest of the season when things bottomed out. So I'm wondering if like Arthur Smith only, the pot only boiled a few times, but was like always at a simmer. I don't know. This is such a hard thing to pick exactly one. I mean, Broderick Jones makes sense. You could argue about that all season. But yeah, if we can't give it to Tomlin every year, and we shouldn't, then I would have to go maybe Arthur Smith, Broderick Jones, Minka, and Terrell, but like real close in there. Yeah. I can hear a solid argument for all four.
Austin, I think even in even earlier than the losing streak, I think Austin was getting some hate because I wrote the article for Behind the Steel Curtain.
I went back and read that because I saw you mention it. Yes, and you did that after the loss to the Cowboys.
Yeah, so that was early.
So that's not a bad.
That's
not Austin. Like I said, Austin's a fine pick too. I don't know. There's just I was going to say there's an embarrassment of riches in terms of the haters' biggest target. There's definitely an embarrassment.
Haters have done their job, and for the Randy Fiechner Award, and then for not to be the Matt Canada Award, that just shows how far back that we've been doing this show. I guess.
Haley Award.
Yeah.
Oh, it has to start with the show then.
I don't know, just like what
No, you're right. You're right.
All right,
the Ron Earhart Award.
Let's move on to worst take of the season, and
so tough.
There are many. I singled out Tim Benz from the Post-Gazette. And
he might be at the Trib now, depending.
Trib. I'm sorry, Trib.
No. I don't know. They move around so much.
And and this could have been any Tomlin criticism, but he got his extension in the offseason this year, and the Ben's our headline was Mike Tomlin's contract extension shows Steelers love stability and accept mediocrity. And this is one of the biggest complaints about Mike Tomlin is that we are just accepting mediocrity. Like 10-7 in the playoffs is mediocre, and it's mediocre for us because we're so used to making the playoffs every year and competing for, the goal is the Super Bowl every year, and that's made us fat, sassy, and spoiled. We're not accepting mediocrity. No one wants to bounce from the playoffs in the first year, but 10-7 is not mediocre in the NFL, and to do it every season is far from mediocre in the NFL. I don't know. That's my worst take of the year.
No, I mean it's that we've heard that take in many different versions. I mean, it's one thing to say that take, when Ben's did. It's not like he said this like right in the emotional moments after the 5-game losing streak where they didn't look competitive. Then you're like, okay, I can hear that. But this was like in what, May? Like in April. That's a little different then. I can certainly see that being a viable option for worst take then. Many people rewrote this same take many ways. They're doing it right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole off season of Tomlin. There were some. Our hater of the year, reigning hater of the year, had a few. The time is now to move on from Tomlin.
Ramon Foster did on Ben's podcast. He did.
Really?
He said that it's not. What did he say? I don't want to move on from Tomlin, but this would have been the time to do it. That was, I guess, when he was just on with Ben.
Sure. I guess this could have been the time. I don't know. This year, 10-7. I don't know. I guess you could say it could have been, but I mean, gosh, they were saying Cowher when he was 6-10 and stuff. And
the thing I came back to is that look, the Steelers aren't going to have the third best, anything more than the third best quarterback in the division over the next decade. You're going to have to win running the ball and playing defense. Now, they don't run the ball well and they don't play defense well in big games, but I don't think there's anyone I would trust to do that more so than Tomlin. So that's where I come back to it each year. You can't show me someone that knows how to win with that better, although they do have to improve that when it counts.
When are we going to stop doing this to Mike Tomlin?
Stop doing this to Mike Tomlin. He's here. He's you saw the speech. He's coming back. He's running it back because he has to, or he has no choice. He's not going anywhere. He's not taking any college jobs. All right. How about the best take of the year? And there were no best takes this year. I don't know. So I was the reigning. There were no best takes last year, so I gave it to myself with Steeler fans should not be proud.
Call this the Dick Cheney Award, I think.
Yeah.
The Jim Rutherford Award, if we're going to Pittsburgh sports. Yes, no, please.
Well, last year it was, I gave it to myself for Steeler fans should not be proud of being fat, sassy, and spoiled.
Okay.
So that, and again, there were no good takes this year, so I got to give it to myself. I got to get back to back best take.
There you go.
Best take of the year.
2-time champs.
Myself for. And I wrote this, like you said, back after the Cowboys lost. Put some respect on Terrell Austin's name. Despite the losing streak, in which the offense did not score more than 17 points in a single game, in one of those games. Mm-hmm. Despite that and giving up all the yardage, 2024 Steelers had the 8th best scoring defense, 12th least yards allowed. They were first in turnovers, 6th against the rush, despite the collapse. I would still say it was not a failure of a season on Terrell Austin.
I mean, I have no. I feel like I can't speak to what Terrell Austin actually does. I don't know how much of the defense is him versus how much of the defense is Tomlin. I do know that, in the playoff game, the defense gave them no chance to win. The same thing happened in the Chiefs game, and the same thing happened in the Eagles game. But they also offense was very bad then too. But the defense did give them a chance to win in the Bengals game. So that, and frankly, the defense played well enough that they should have won that final Bengals game. I don't know about any of this. I certainly can't think of a good take take, but I do know that, as Tomlin has said, the defense is expected to be the catalyst of our efforts, and for the last month, they were definitely not. So I could see some improvement there, but I can't say that Terrell Austin was the problem because, again, I have no idea who has what responsibilities on the defense. Tomlin has said big changes are coming. That doesn't mean anyone has to get fired. If anything, it might mean it's time for some more folks to get hired. Maybe it's time. I mean, I always forget the Steelers have the league's smallest coaching staff. Maybe a few more cooks in the kitchen. I do know from seeing Hard Knocks that the Ravens had that entire news panel of nerds, and it's one of them that pointed out to Russ Wilson. He only shoots drop-offs and three-pointers, and maybe we need an entire call center of people fresh out of college or whatever that was. So I don't know. I mean, I know the defense didn't play up to expectations the whole time, but I can't say that is or is not Austin's fault.
Yeah, I mean, to give the Steelers a chance to win against the Ravens in the playoffs, they would have had to have held them to 14 points, which means that it would have been some superstar plays from superstar players.
Or just not give up 2 touchdowns on 90-yard drives in the first half like that. But this is all hindsight stuff, and who knows what actually happened. Like I said, I have no idea what Austin's actual responsibilities are, so I don't feel I can speak to them.
So you defend me my best take then.
I think that's as good a take as any. I mean, I worry that the best take of the year was whoever had said 10-3. This isn't a Super Bowl contender. I worry that was kind of the best take of the year.
Mark Madden, maybe.
Yeah, that's why. That's the only thing I could think of, and I didn't even want to throw that out there.
Okay. Shall we move on to Hater of the Year?
No.
And this. I thought he dropped off of Twitter because he was the Hater of the Year back in 2022, but then he deleted that account, and I thought, oh no, but then he was back.
Oh no,
he was back in 2024. For example, in the preseason, keep in mind tweets like this in the preseason from @SteelCityGuy84, Will the Thrill. The Steelers are no longer a great team. The dynasty they once were is gone. They are now bottom dwellers. They won't win 5 games this year. What an embarrassment. Omar Khan, you're fired. And that was in the preseason, and then it just continued on and on throughout the season. Will the Thrill. @SteelCityGuy84. I should have reached out to you to try to get you on, but you are the Hater of the Year.
And really, Kyle is right about this. You can't. I don't know if you can see this, gentle fans, but this is a command performance. I mean, this tweet has no capitalization. It's Omar Khan, you're fired. YOUR. I mean, this is like the perfect Hater tweet. This is like if there were like a combine of Hater tweets, this would be like the measurables that everyone is trying to get to.
That's our Hater of the Year, although I was going to give it to Steelers Takeaways also. Had a great year
they
of
put
haters.
up a good year, too. That was, but they'll be back. We know they'll be back.
Yeah.
They will be here for the 2025-2026 season.
I'm thinking about reaching out to Steelers Takeaways to get onto the Kangaroony court to see if he can defend his takes. But
that could also be one of those where it's like 12 dudes or something. It's like a Hydra. I mean, who knows?
Hater of the Year, Will the Thrill @SteelCityGuy84. All right, now our final award and maybe the most controversial of the year, our Fan of the Year. We've always found a fan on Twitter who's kept it positive, whether it was Pastor Runge in the past or
Rick Fish.
Rick Fish 412. Who was the third one? Who's our third Fan of the Year? I can't remember.
I can't either.
I should look that up. But this season, a lot of people got off of Twitter when it became the cesspool that it is.
More of a cesspool.
But, throughout all the season, all through thick and thin, I didn't really have a Fan of the Year. I couldn't really find a Fan of the Year. I guess I could have went back to Rick Fish or I don't know. It just didn't speak to me this year.
Well, one, that's good because I'm always relieved to hear you say you spend less time on Twitter, Kyle. That makes me feel genuinely good. And two, I actually clicked on Rick Fish's account going into the playoff game, and he had this like really soulful, touching thing about like, I've always been an optimist. I'm not optimistic about this game. Like even Rick was feeling it going in. So that's when I realized how bad the vibes were. They got to Rick. I mean, that's, Rick could be the fan of the year every year. I mean, if you look at the man's feed, he seems like a sweet dude. I have no idea. But when they got to him, I'm like, whoa, this is a bleak situation when they got to Rick Fish.
So, no fan of the year, and I guess that's the kind of season that the Steelers had this year was no fan of the year, and maybe we don't deserve to celebrate a fan after.
Yeah,
a season like this.
I mean it's when the entire season ever since April we all said, man, that gauntlet's going to be tough, and then it was just as bad, if not worse, than we thought. Like it's weird because it was a season that you could have predicted kind of how it would go, not exactly how it would get there. But you could have found the ultimate answer in how it went, unless you were Vegas and had that 7.5 games thing. But yeah, I think it was a season that fell on a particular I mean, you could have looked at it that night and it came out in April and said, yeah, that's probably how it's going to go.
We were talking after 2 weeks, like, or 3 weeks, no 3-0 team did anything worse than like an AFC Championships game. After 10 weeks, we were like, oh, how this team ranks and with the best defensives of all time, and it was like 10th or maybe it was, I can't remember now, but it was not insignificant at the time as far as the
10-3. They were 10-3 once upon a time. Mm-hmm. And then that all went away when they played the Contenders, and they could just never come back from that, whether it was physically, mentally, or emotionally,
or social media certainly was the case. So now the long off season of the soul starts. Mm-hmm. But that's the Yinzies. I guess we wrap it up on a somber note.
That's what we've been talking about.
I'm going to try to put these up and have you can vote on them on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. We'll see if how that goes.
Okay.
Not a ton of people clicked on the Jim Rooney interview, I guess, the other week. Although it made big press. Someone else retweeted it. I was just like, what? We had just had him. Why aren't you retweeting us? Because I didn't really put any I got to do that. I'm so bad at. I got so much.
You got so many things to do, Cal. You shouldn't feel bad about that. Now it was someone else where he gave that response where they're like, "Is it when they asked him like, is it Tomlin's fault with the playoff game?" And then he said all the other things, and people got upset about that. That was okay.
But he said something similar to me, and
okay, makes sense.
And how he had the same thing I've been saying. How there's rationales for these playoff losses. He's talking about the Pouncey snap over Ben's head and the 4 interceptions, and talking about how the Jacksonville loss. They had 4 All-Pro players on Jacksonville's defense. I didn't realize that.
And Bell showed up 5 minutes before the game started.
So according to insiders, I guess, and I don't know. I guess. The people.
Well, you'd also never would have thought to press him because that was put out on some level to kind of embarrass him, right? I mean, that's the reason. I mean, I just would imagine that's why they would put that. I mean, there's a reason that clip went viral because they knew that was chum in the waters. Like you can put that out, that the haters are going to flock to it. So that's I could see why. But no, I mean, I if he said something similar to you, I mean, that makes sense. But I also can't imagine you were like, well, why is it Tomlin's fault that you didn't present it that way? I know that.
They've got a lot of comments on the website on Behind the Steel Curtain. That had like 140 web comments, which I guess is fine.
They were all well reasoned.
But then no one wanted to click through the whole interview. It had like 88 clicks or whatever, which is fine. I guess I shouldn't complain about 88 clicks. Whatever. All right. Let's keep the conversation going. Leave a review on iTunes. Yes. That's really would be helpful. Or just like and subscribe on YouTube and blah, blah. Like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Yeah. No, but write a review. That would be cool. Mm-hmm. And we will keep the conversation continues next week. I don't know. I want to make it a fun off season. I want to try to do some different things. I don't know what though. What are we going to do?
Anything as far away from mock drafts as possible.
What can we do that's going to be different and unique and entertaining and fun? I don't know.
Right, exactly. But I know that anything we do will be better than mock drafts. We could sit here and stare blankly at your phone. That would be better than a mock draft.
No mock drafts in January, that's for sure, and hopefully none in February.
Not until free agency. It's
just until that. All right. Until next week, keep listening to your coach.
Be their best selves. That's going to be required.
Stay in school.